Уважаемые участники сессии, предлагаем начать наше
So,
заседание.
distinguished participants, I suggest we finally start. Like I said, this is the very first big business forum after the resignation of the government, and this in no way should influence the topics for discussion for our discussion, which is through investment attractiveness to an economy of trust. And this format of our business dinner has been designed especially to get together all the key participants from authorities, from agencies, and so on, to have a joint discussion. Trust is the main thing we need for economic growth, and the connection between the level of trust in the society and the GDP per capita in a country is supported by many economic studies. For instance, FINAM study showed that when trust goes up by 10 percentage points, the GDP per capita increases by 21%. Norway, Sweden, and Finland, based on data, have the highest level of trust in the society, highest worldwide. And their trust is 3 times higher than in Russia, and GDP per capita is 5 or 6 times higher than in Russia. Another indicator of trust in the society is security companies' personnel count. We have approximately the same quantity of those who work in private security companies and Ministry of the Interior or police. The similar ratios we see in the United States and in China, which is an indicator of lack of trust. And lack of trust influences the way the businesses work, the economy works. Very often we say that the state trusts the businesses, the businesses do not trust the state, there are some conflicts all the time. Under pressure, some smaller and medium enterprises lose any future, and they start working based on the principle to earn much in no time and get out of this business. And all this hinders the economic growth in the country. The question is, how are we going to change this situation? The best solution is not just to create a good, favorable business climate, but also adoption of some new measures, laws to favor business development. And also we need to favor trust. We need to favor trust and improve relations between businesses and banks and law enforcement agencies and everyone. Based on business survey, it is the armed forces, the church, and the universities that have the highest trust in our population, while it is still 2-3 times lower, this level of trust, than in the countries with the highest trust. And this is about stability in tax system, in regulatory system. We need predictable conditions of business, and we need to be sure, businesses need to be sure that this is not going to change every day. Now let us ask the first question to Igor Shuvalov, chairman of Russia State Development Corporation, RANEPA. Relations based on trust minimize risks, improve results. Economy of trust is the key to success, but this should be supported by institutions that can be a bridge between the businesses and the state to help the economy of the country develop the way we want it. We do have such institutes, and WEB, headed by Igor Shuvalov, coordinates their activities, their liaison. They are doing their best to help people to live comfortably in any city and village. And what do you think? Do we have to further develop these institutes of trust? And how is the state going to and supposed to participate in this work? Thank you. I'm the first to speak. I thought you would leave me a place somewhere in the middle or at the end of the discussion. Okay, let me start with a joke then. I was not long ago in a Latin American country. You said that there is a high trust in armed forces in our country. You know, the best and most successful businesses in that country belong to the army. You come to a plant, everything is beautiful, clean, and so on. You ask, who's the owner? Oh, Ministry of Defense. Then you go to a hotel, for instance, which is terrible, which is not owned by the armed forces. Well, you can guess which country I'm talking about, but this is how it sometimes is. Now, talking about trust. German Gref was the sponsor and curator of the Russian-Singaporean Business Council. He represented Russia, and he was asked a lot of questions about Russian economy, Russian democracy, and the like. And our ex-prime minister, who had a special status, he said, well, no one asked him the question, but he said, if you ask me which is more important for the investor, democracy or predictability, I would say that any business person wants predictability, and the best economies are based on predictability. Never be in a hurry. Think long ahead. Even though you are criticized maybe for the democracy being not too crystal clear at times. But after the United States of America started undermining the WTO, who can we trust? I'm talking about global institutes. After sanctions were enacted, if we take, for instance, the World Bank or EBRD, they made the decision not to give loans to Russian projects. The system was undermined, it collapsed. And you see that any system that you trusted yesterday can be in a complete collapse today. And people do not trust each other. Doesn't matter we're talking about business people or public servants. We have too much information to digest. We cannot digest it. We are getting information from everywhere all the time. And it's not just a problem of trust, but all of us, especially the younger generation, they are very cautious about, they should be cautious about everything, and talking seriously how we can improve this trust. It's very clear after the president's speech. And today, Mr. Putin said, answering the question what will happen after 2024, he said, it makes no sense for you to think that after 2024, there will be something completely different. We are going to ensure that everything we are creating today will be driven on and will be followed ahead. Because people can be really afraid of people to come and undermine everything we have been creating these years. I am one of those who thinks that what we achieved since 1990, the Constitution was adopted, we have really achieved a lot of success. And if we look around the world, Russia is now actually much better off than some European countries, let's be honest. If you watch TV, read news on internet, read the press, and if you have no idea what happens in Russia, of course people will not understand this, but we are adult people here. We know what we're talking about, and we know that, of course, the picture of Russia you have, not having ever been to Russia, not knowing how it is different from what you see being here. And we also have to look deeper into our institutions, into our agencies and authorities. But talking about trust, I think today we have the optimum conditions for SMEs to generate projects, smaller, larger, medium size. Maybe now it is the best time for the business development. If you look at, the system inside the European Economic Community, you see it's far from being ideal, the situation. And in Russia, in comparison with them, probably we have even higher predictability for our business. It's not just Russian cases that I'm talking about. Okay, United States, China, Brazil. Talking about trust, talking about security. No, I'm not saying that we love what we have in Russia. Of course not. Of course, there are things that really need to be changed. But still, if we are objective, if we take an objective look at this, we have to admit that there are still a lot of good things in our country. And even though we have a lot of good things, of course, there is much more to be done. That's why we are not complacent. We want to do better because we have to be better. And in terms of business, of course, the current level sometimes is unacceptable. And talking about life and well-being of population, of course, this is unacceptable, and we have to work on that. And when we started this campaign in 2014, the sanctions started in a few months, which turned into an economic war. And of course, in response to that, Russia should answer by consolidation of the society. Look at Israel, which is in a very particular situation. And being in this very complex particular situation, they are so consolidated, fighting inflation, fighting terrorism, and so on. And they are showing us that even being in such a very difficult, complex situation, they can work really well. Talking about mechanisms of creating trust, we have many and too few at the same time, but you can have micro support, micro loan if you are a small business or whatever. We have a choice. Last year, for instance, we made a decision to allocate a lot of funds and we approved several projects which will generate hundreds of billions of rubles, of course not today and not tomorrow. And of course, maybe people will not feel the benefit from these projects tomorrow or in a year, but these are projects for many years to come. And at the same time, to make people really feel better and feel the change, we have to focus on municipal economies. Because, of course, it is a great event to launch a rocket, to launch a tanker or something, but what people want, they want to live in a comfortable environment. They want to feel comfortable in their own country. Yes, we are losing younger generation which goes abroad for studies or whatever. We understand this is a problem, this is a challenge for us, this is a big goal to change the situation, a goal for business community as well, for our partners. We are trying to reach people, reach citizens, to make them see what national projects we have. 10 trillion rubles for national projects, this is just a figure you hear about. But when each particular person can understand that, yes, I will have housing, I will have this, I will have an opportunity to give good education to my kids, the environment I live in is better than if I emigrated to Netherlands, for instance. Maybe it sounds non-realistic currently, but you know, Moscow was the way it was with the older budget before our current mayor, and our current mayor now showed in no time that we can make people live better. For me, trust means is when all together we can change life around us. First of all, trust is based on all of us being each in his or her own place, in the right place, and doing his or her job the right way. You know, I know a lot of business people who work in corporations, who founded corporations having no state share in their companies. Their mission has nothing to do to state authorities, to state powers, but they say about themselves that they serve the country because they change cities, they change industry, they are creating a completely different, better environment to people to live in. So in our country, you know, when we talk about these big figures, big changes, that's good. But first of all, we have to understand, since we are talking about investments, we have to create new level of service to our citizens via increasing trust. That's our final goal. Thank you. I fully agree with you. Thank you. I fully agree that not everything in our country is as bad as many mass media abroad imagine it to be. Of course, in principle, we have made a good leap as compared to late 1980s or early 90s, because it used to be one single country, which then split into 15 republics and then collapsed. There used to be a single political system. There were generations of people who did not know what means personal finance, what capitalism means, what private property means, and then suddenly it was announced that Russia is a country with the market economy. That was a complete change for us. And many people really acknowledge the fact that Russia has gone a big way ahead from what it used to be. And if you take the last meeting of consultative board on investments in October last year, it was acknowledged that this is like an investment forum where people come from around the world. They meet vice prime ministers, ministers, business community. And I would like to ask a question to Alexei Malinovsky. He's the head of MasterCard in Russia. My question is, there are lots of different ratings which compare the attractiveness of business conduct in different countries. It's like the World Bank has a rating of comfort of business conduct and so on. And Russia is now holding 28th, 29th place. So we are ahead of the majority of CIS countries, except for Kazakhstan, by the way. Tell me, when you make a decision on doing this or that project, do you look at these ratings? Do you trust these ratings, since we are talking about economy of trust here today? And tell me, what are the main things you look at when making decisions? Do you look at ratings or economic conclusions of your economists? And talking about benchmarking in business environment, what's the Russia's true place in this rating, would you say? Thank you for your question. You know, like any global corporation, we look, of course, at the ratings that are being published from time to time. These are ratings about business conduct in different countries. But since we have worked in this country for more than 20, nearly 30 years, of course, we are first of all based on our understanding on how you can do business in Russia, because 30 years of success in Russia just confirm our initial idea that Russia is a good country for business. And there are, of course, a number of factors we look at: investment, innovative index, cultural development index, investment potential, it's 32nd place. In some other ratings, we are ranking 50th, but we are always looking at the development of our business from a very purely pragmatic point of view. If you look at digitalization of economy, at cashless economy, for instance, we have more than 50% of cashless transactions, for instance, already. Taking the number of transactions made from smartphones, Russia is #1 worldwide. Please remember, since we are talking about our places and ratings, and sometimes we forget about some very good places we have in other ratings. So if we look at certain ratings, we are either #1 or among the first on the top of the list, which means that we really do have a high potential of growth here. And like Igor Shuvalov said, a good, important indicator for any business, for any company, is predictability of your business. Because for any business, I guess you'll agree that talking about investments, first thing, most important thing for you to consider is how you are going to get back what you invested. Of course, we are investing for a long term, but we want to be sure that we will have them back. No one's thinking to have a payback in 2, 5, or 10 years maybe, but still, we always have to look at the possible change of economic situation in the country in the coming 5 to 10 years, what we have to do to hold our leadership here, and so on. And by the way, we do not only use the data from other ratings and studies, but we too have our research here with Russian School of Economics and Skolkovo Business School. We have joint studies being organized. For instance, we have Digital Russia Index ranking. We are working on, because this is also important for everyone to see how we can improve the digitalization of the country and to further promote the cashless economy. And again, comparing with other countries, I'm maybe not in such a position to say about the way the environment for business conduct is like in this country or that country, because I've been here for so many years. But once again, what we look at here in Russia, #1, payback, possibility of payback, how our investment, whether it is viable, and how favorable will our investments be for our business, and how well our initiative and our investment fits into the national programs and projects. Like Igor Shuvalov said, that there are projects that probably don't seem to be global, but they are about improving the environment for people around them, like smart cities. We invest a lot in this project, for instance, because we have a wealth of experience, and that's right. To do something really great, you have to start from something really small. And the way you perceive the environment for business, for anything, starts from the way you feel, where you live, where you work. So, if you make people want to stay in this country, live in this country, invest in this country, invest their time, invest their efforts and everything, that's the key to success. That's why, of course, we as a business are interested in making people, common people's lives more comfortable, more interesting. It's sometimes something you cannot show in figures. It's something, the way you feel about it. But we do see a good potential in this respect. We see things that have to be changed. There are things that really need to be improved. Yes, but on the whole, It could have been much worse. Okay, thank you. Another question to a representative of Coca-Cola who's been in Russia for many years. So I would like to give the floor to Alexander Ruzhevich, General Manager of Coca-Cola for Russia. You are planning to reduce the CO2 emissions a lot by 2025. It's about responsibility. And you are going to reduce the volume of water you use for production, and you are going to sell as many bottles and cans of cola as you sell. Our company, your company, is a very responsible company. Can you tell us how it is integrated in this economy of trust system, and how these programs you have in Russia differ from the programs you have in other countries or continents? What are your plans for future, and do such projects in terms of sustainable development, do they really help to improve the attitude of the people?
My apologies, I will speak in English because my Russian is not that good that I will be able to answer the question properly. Coca-Cola is present officially in Russia for past 25 years. And the operating model of Coca-Cola in any country, and I will remind you that Coca-Cola is pioneer when it comes to business entry, so we are entering first, irrespectively to the business conditions, so we are showing the way to other businesses. The operating model of Coca-Cola is based on partnership with communities, with the authorities, with other businesses, and the key element of partnership is trust. So there is a high level of trust which our system is showing when it comes to business opportunity which we see in Russia. But we are not here only because of business opportunity, and the fact that we are, as a responsible partner to the local communities and to authorities and to the people of Russia, we are running a number of programs which you mentioned, is a proof point that we are, yes, here to achieve our business goals, to achieve our key business indicators, but also to build a business which is going to be long-lasting business, which is going to be sustainable business, which is going to create the value for our shareholders, but also for the society and for the country of Russia in years to come. So I will mention just few streams in which we are active when it comes to social responsibility and sustainability agenda. The one of most important is under umbrella of World Without Waste, which goes together with our global commitment to recycle 100% of the waste which we are producing up to 2030. And I would share with you one great example from Russia. We signed the contract, Zero Waste City contract with Kazan, and we are proud to report that already in 2018 in Kazan we recycled 100% of the waste which we produced. The other programs are also connected with World Without Waste, their area of education, and through educational institutions, university and schools, we already managed to reach to more than 1.7 million students and pupils who are educated about the importance of waste collection and separation. And this is when it comes to waste stream. The second very important stream is about inclusiveness. So our agenda is very much targeting the vulnerable groups. We are very much taking care about gender balance. I would just give you one fact. In Coca-Cola system, the representation of women is on the level of 42% versus 37%, which is average of Russia, which means that we take care about the genders, we take care about vulnerable groups, and we are developing a number of platforms to help these people to integrate better and faster in the society of Russia. And I would mention the play parks, I would mention the Christmas caravan, which has inclusiveness on the top of the agenda. And we are here to take care about those groups and also to help Russia through institutions and universities to build new waves of leaders for the future. Of course, in everything which we do, we are fully aligned with the sustainability goals which were proclaimed by United Nations. There are 17 goals. And now, straight answer to your question, what is different in Russia versus all other countries and versus what is proclaimed by UN? There are two things which I mentioned. One is agenda around inclusiveness. So we are very much active in this area. And the second area, which is very important for Coca-Cola in Russia, is helping to the people when it comes to emergency situations. So whenever somebody is in the need, we are there to help them with the basic needs, which is hydration and providing them with our beverages, of course, free of charge on the locations when and where our products are needed. So I will just repeat one thing which is extremely important for us, that trust is key element of partnership, and we see our presence in Russia as a partnership with communities, with authorities, and with the people of Russia. So we are here to stay and to build the future together.
Александр, вопрос прояснить хотел. У вас 42%.
I wanted to ask you, you have 42% of women working on higher...
Versus 37%, which
Это высокий уровень, действительно.
Yes, that's a really good figure. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to representatives of our Russian regions. I remember some 15 years ago, Alexei Ivanchenko, who is here today as well. He was the head of Department of Economic Policy of Ministry of Economic Development, and we went together to Tula. We had a visit to discuss the investment opportunities in the region, and it's happened so that just a few months ago, I was again in Tula, and I saw what they have now. We have Mr. Fedorishev, who is the first deputy governor of Tula region, and you know, I was impressed. To tell you of what they have, I went to Yasnaya Polyana, I went to Kulikovo Pole, and those of you who haven't been there, it's a must to visit, trust me. I also visited the painters' residence. They have a creative arts cluster, Octava, and we went for dinner to a small restaurant. It was opened by a couple of business people from Moscow. These are 4 business guys from Moscow who opened a restaurant in Tula. It is a small family restaurant, which is not easy to get in because it is very popular. And tell me, please, how did you manage to develop the SMEs in your region so well? How did you manage to win trust, not just of SMEs in your region, but also of a large number of international companies, big multinational companies? Tell us, please, how do you support business investments and investors? Do you have some new investment mechanisms to keep this high level of trust in your region? Thank you. After what you told about my region, there's not much to add, and I can actually pack my things and go back home. Thank you. Thank you for praising us. Of course, it all depends on the person who is in charge. Of course, it is thanks to the governor, because he supported small and medium-sized business at regional, federal level, and we have enough money to fund SMEs. We planned up to 1 trillion rubles, out of which we spent only 700 billion because SMEs were not sufficiently informed about the opportunities they could have. That's why we are now enhancing the campaign to inform everyone via Instagram and other social media, because many people did not know that there are opportunities. Trust. After what Mr. Shuvalov said about trust, of course, I can't add much, but Well, trust into infrastructure. This is what we do have. We want to have a smart city, a city which will think and wants to think about environment-friendly business development. And without this, there will be no trust. That's why we have to trust each other, and we have to stake on the trust. And you are always welcome to come to Tula. Coca-Cola, you are welcome too.
Moscow, only to Oslo, and you're truly welcome. Всем спасибо большое.
Спасибо. Ну, давайте обратим
Thank you.
разговор на российский
And
бизнес.
now, okay, let's
Алексей
look at Russian
Чичканов,
businesses.
первый вице-президент.
Alexei Chichkanov, first vice president of Gazprom Bank. Yes, you are here.
Стабильность и предсказуемость законодательства,
Stability
как мы
and
все знаем, играет очень важную
predictability
роль
of
для всех
laws
регуляторов в
is
нормальной
important for all of us, because if we had a predictable regulatory framework, then only we can plan our business for years ahead. And studies show direct correlation between the quality of legislative framework in the country and the level of investment activity. And regulatory stability in Russia is very often criticized, even too often maybe. We remember the times when investment in Russia was higher than now. Investors were not afraid of the gaps in our legislative framework. Many projects were in a way speculative, but now we have done a lot to change the situation, to improve it. Can you tell us how these changes change the investment climate and investment activity, and how do you assess the state's initiatives in this respect, talking about the regulatory guillotine everyone is talking about? Thank you. You are right to say that very often our own authorities and our successes are very often criticized. That's the way we are. We don't praise them by tradition. We usually criticize them, and when we invest money in the Russian economy, when we make any investment decisions in our bank, of course, we see more criticism of Russian legislators. But considering what Mr. Shuvalov said about the infrastructure, into development of which Gazprom Bank really invests a lot over the past years, I can say that we have really had a good success in this respect. While for many years in other countries, in terms of regulatory environment, I can say that sometimes it took years or decades in other countries to improve the regulatory framework. Even though this market, it emerged about a bit more than 10 years ago, but now 1 trillion rubles and even more is the volume of investments that have already been contracted. And I can tell you that every year this volume of investment is growing 35 to 40%. Like in 2019, the investment volume increased by 37%, for instance. And the loan maturity, the loans that we grant, they have a maturity of about 7.5 years, which means that in this context, it is the trust in business and of business that really matters now more, and this stability and predictability is extremely important, because the way the businesses do business in the country depends a lot on the regulatory activities. And since the market is still a young one and the market is very timid yet, so any change of approach in the market is always perceived by the business community with apprehension, with caution. And For instance, because of contradictions between different laws and decrees in our country. In Bashkiria, there was a case a few years ago, there was a problem. And for 18 months, all investment decisions on investing into road construction were actually frozen because of this inconsistency between different laws. This is how the market responds to a situation of unpredictability. And the market of capital investment is a market which is also based on trust, and you can achieve a lot if you create trust in your legislative framework and its predictability, because we really do have stabilizing clauses to help businesses understand that a change in the environment will not automatically cancel all agreements, but this will be a very good thing to show to the business that the state, the country, realizes that stability and predictability is the prerequisite for doing business. And since we are talking about possible changes in the investment legislation, we hope that, and of course we are sure that no previous agreements will be cancelled, and in future these investments will be even reinforced for our partners to understand that the projects which are made for 20, 30 and more years will be co-funded by the investors and by the bank. And what's important, it's important for the regional economy. Yes, in the infrastructure, there are a lot of federal projects started, and it started from federal projects, but now, currently, we see that money-wise, the investment infrastructural projects in separate regions are more numerous than the federal projects, and those who have concluded an agreement with someone, an agreement on investment, usually the parties start from one industry, for instance, from one project, but then they sign the agreements for other projects, for instance, building boiler houses or building housing for the healthcare workers or whatever. And this is now a trend, and this shows that the trust will increase. And of course, the trust will be based on the fact that the authorities will keep to all the agreements, will stick to all the agreements that have been reached in the previous years. That's a must. Thank you. Now we say a lot about the trust of young businesses, of startups in our country, because as soon as the young startup feels they are doing well, they move to other locations like Europe or whatever. So my question is to the managing partner of Almaz Capital Partners, Alexander Galevsky. Is it right to say that successful startups are quitting our country, moving to other markets to make a success? Because now it's common practice to register the company, to incorporate the company in other jurisdictions, and we often see that such companies, they are looking for further development of their business in international markets in other countries. Is there such a trend, would you say, and how can we improve trust of such businesses to let them stay in our country? How can we make our country more attractive for such promising young companies, startups, and international venture investors? I would say that the question is a really very complex one, and nothing new has actually happened lately. High-tech companies, they will continue looking for a good place in jurisdictions where there is a high demand for innovative offers, innovative products. It is a general trend. It's not just over the past few years that we see it. If we link if we look for a link between some political situation and this trend, well, the United States, for instance, they consume 70 to 90% of all the innovations that are generated by innovators. In Russia, no one of those sitting here in this room will say that yesterday I bought a startup and I very successfully and immediately incorporated it into my current business. It doesn't happen so in Europe, so in Russia either. It's about European companies, it's about Russian companies. 85% of the world market is formed in the United States for innovative companies. Of course, everyone knowing this go to the United States. In the past, migration was slower, technological migration. Now, technologies migrate much swifter. This is also due to the fact where this all came from. It's about toxicity the West is talking about. So this trend just became more visible, even though this was the case years ago as well. China is the next market for this, but it's a consumer of various things like B2C consumption, but talking about B2B things, the development in China isn't very considerable. $100 million, $150 million funds for B2B business. This is maximum in China, which is nothing. What should we change to change the situation? Of course, Russia should become a producer of technologies, and it's about trust again. For a venture fund, the life cycle is 10 or 12 years. If I don't feel predictable business in the coming 10 to 12 years, I will not create a venture fund in Russian Federation, because it's a lot of time. And this is true also for companies, not just venture funds. A company, a high-tech company, I'm not talking about marketing companies, but a high-tech company, it takes them 5 to 7 years to success. Or like EM company, which was created by Ratmir Timashev, and it took him 6 or 7 years to grow it to the size that he sold it for 42 billion. And this is what we need first for business. And we have to make big business get used to consumption. There is a saying in the West that no one's going to sack me for buying IBM my frame. Even though in Russia, for instance, there is a practice of sale of companies. For instance, we bought a company which was losing $2 million. Every month we bought it at $480 million because it was perfectly integrated into our business. And that's why this is my answer to your question. Well, it's not only about pessimistic outlooks, like digitalization is a big advantage now, for instance. Thank you. The Russian president, we are coming back to the key event today in Russia, presidential address. We are discussing here how to favor the investors. And Mr. Putin also spoke today about a new law on improvement of investment climate and favoring investments in Russia. And there is a draft law with mechanisms of support of investments. This went through the State Duma, the government of Russia. The discussion was held at different levels, and there are different opinions about such possible law. I would like to give the floor to Deputy Minister of Finance of Russia to comment this topic. What's innovative in this draft law, Mr. Ivanov? What will this new law what will it mean for the business, and what investment opportunities and mechanisms favoring investment activities in Russia are foreseen in this law? And after that, I would like to ask the representatives of regional authorities the answer of Deputy Minister of Finance, Andrei Ivanov. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Yes, this is the very first event, such major event in Russia, with representatives of all regions, all businesses and academic community. And I would like to report to you, yes, report, since we are talking about implementation of what was agreed upon in State Duma. The draft law did not change conceptually after the first reading, and all the elements and the structure of the law to reinforce the trust in investing in Russia, all these elements are still there in the law. But what changes is, it's not a change in the concept, it's a change in the technology of implementation of these mechanisms prescribed in the law. So, this investment regime will apply to all those investing in Russian Federation. In the first reading, we spoke about those doing projects. Now we are talking about any kind of investment activities, except for investing in your personal household needs or whatever. So this is going to cover all levels of economy and businesses. Now, talking about the agreement between the business community and the state, based exactly on the agenda of our business dinner, we are going towards creating better trust, economy of trust, and we want the investor bringing his money into our country will have stable conditions of doing business for 15, 20, 25 years to come. How? We are going to stipulate in the law that all agreements will be made electronically. Confirmation of information giving to investor, this is changed, and only at the stage of including the investor in the document on protection of investments, then there will be an agreement signed with the Russian Federation authorities and authorities of the region where the investor came to. And we suggested to specify better the commitments of the Russian government in terms of exact types and volume of investment support. And it's no secret that many laws that have these stabilization clauses, I'm talking about laws on PPP or laws on concessions, they are not accompanied by similar provisions in other laws, which is important. About compensation, for instance, in case of change of something in the investment legislation or whatever. So on the one hand, we want to fix very specifically our commitment, but again, you can make the state be responsible and stick to its promises only when the state understands what it is supposed to do, and that's why we want a more specific outline of what the government is supposed to do to support investments. Because in different situations there may be some unpredictable problems, and we need to be sure that in any case we'll have a protection. And again, talking about the mechanism of trust, I want to have your support, guys, here. We are talking about a mechanism that mechanism where the state will have a commitment to the investor, while the investor does not have a very firm commitment to the state. The investor brings the capital, invests in something, and we understand that if everything goes well, there will be new jobs created, SMEs developed, life better in different places of our country, but the commitment of the state will be not to change any conditions that have been agreed upon with the investor. And this is the structure of the document that we want to preserve. And please support us, because when we are talking about generating this economy of trust, we need to write down that the business is not obliged to, does not have to. The business must have an opportunity to invest, to be protected, and so on. You know why it's important? We are creating an automated system of administering the investment regime and the business at different levels, so that every tax inspector at any place in our country will understand what are the business conditions of this or that investment. And that's why the Federal Tax Service should also be included into this process of discussion. And talking about financial and investment audit, someone was asking whether the Ministry of Finance is going to do the audit of all the investment mechanisms. No, this is not our goal. The law will say that the Ministry of Finance will have a registry, a list of different measures to support investors, so that the investors would have access and would know about all the benefits they can have, all subsidies, all privileges. There should be a single unified registry of these privileges and conditions of favoring investment in Russia, so that everyone, everywhere could know, could learn about this, so that all the authorities at any level would know by heart all of this, so that they would say, yes, we have enough resources, enough quotas to do this or that to support your investment. And we, of course, are not talking about each particular project, but about the measures to support investments. And we want to have a systematic approach to making this list of investment benefits and privileges and so on. And those who are very active in investing in our country, let me tell you, to help you feel more trust for us, we are not going to undermine the markets, of course not. We understand that what we currently have is already actively used by those who invest in Russia, and we are not going to meddle in your businesses. We will give an opportunity for you to get ready to adapt to these changes we are suggesting. You'll have a couple of years for this for sure, and we will have a special clause to say which norms of which law will never change when you conclude a concession agreement, for instance. And both for subjects, Russian constituents or municipalities, doesn't matter whom you conclude an agreement with, these authorities will have to monetize or digitize in the agreement the amount of how much it will cost, what resources the authorities have to implement this or that, and what are the deadlines. Because currently this is not really regulated. The authority sort of gives a commitment, but about nothing, because without any specific figures, deadlines, and whatever. And if nothing happens, no one will be able to say that there was a firm commitment. This is how it was now before. So these are the main changes I mentioned. There are a number of other details that will change. Of course, the deadlines given to us they are hard to meet. The Parliament is waiting for the new draft for the second reading, which will be ready, I hope, by the end of this week. And after that, we'll have consultations with the business community, with the regions and authorities. Please, everyone, please participate in these discussions, in these readings, and please respond to our new revised wording of the draft law with your suggestions or criticism. This is important for us because we need to present this new draft to the second reading and then submit it to the Russian president for signature. And now let's invite our representatives from Russian and foreign business to comment what you just said. Our colleague from Norilsk Nickel, can you say a word? I don't like criticizing, and critics. I've worked for more than 10 years in the authorities. That's why we like a dialogue. We really support this project of the new law on protection and promotion of capital investment and development of investment activity. And it's a law which will also consider some social projects which are not for-profit projects like creating jobs or environmental protection, which we are also focusing on. For instance, we have a major investment program up to 2030 to invest more than 2.5 trillion rubles. Our sulfur project cost will be a very big one, so we really do support this kind of change in the law. We are planning to increase by 15% the output of non-ferrous metals, ferrous metals increased by 25%, and of course this means more responsibility. Of course, talking about this new law, we expect, I understand the regional authorities, they have budgets they have to implement, they are working under pressure. And a few years ago, there was an experiment where the Russian constituents, they had to give privileges on the property tax, and only some of Russian constituents made it 0%. Some regions changed it differently, but no one thought about difference between regions, environment, and whatever. In the Arctic, it's completely different. So, of course, we are focused to support this new law because we really badly need it now. Thank you. Natalia Kolerova from Novartis, your comment. Thank you very much. I representative of a major multinational corporation, and for us, regulatory stabilization in terms of capital investment, stability, predictability, and transparency of conditions, choice of partners. It's very important for us, especially since we work in healthcare industry, providing new technologies and high-tech medicinal products to the Russian population. Now we have a lot of social programs underway because they are two very important for us. We want to be a fully fledged player and investor in Russia. That's why we are going to participate in such projects. We'll participate in all debates, and I very much hope that such change in the investment law will really bring changes, good changes to us. We really count on this. Thank you. One of the instruments of support of investment activities in the framework of this new law we are talking about is change of mechanism of creating costs of infrastructural transformation. Mr. Minnikhanov Can you tell us what are you going to do about it in the Republic of Tatarstan? We have been looking for this law for a long time. The last abbreviation of the name of the new law is ZPK. Okay, we very much hope that it will be soon adopted. And we think that we have projects for 4, 5, or even more billion rubles worth projects in the Republic of Tatarstan that have not been implemented yet, waiting for this law. For instance, there is a big project which was supported, LDK2, and there, in the coming period, we'll have an opportunity to take 21 billion with investment, total investment of 42, and this is a petrochemical project, and what we are going to invest is a lot of money in it shortly. In our republic, investment into fixed assets was not less than 600 billion rubles, but since we want to accelerate this process, today you remember what the president said, how much investment we need in our economy to improve the GDP per capita. And looking at our region, at our republic, at the needs in terms of social, economic development, development of industry, we have 2 special economic zones. We have a techno park, 1,500,000 square meters, a huge territory which would never have been there if it hadn't been for the state support. So I'm here to say that the Republic of Tatarstan will warmly welcome the new law. We have already got ready to start working based on the new law, which we expect. We have already prepared everything. It's usually the biggest problem with the Ministry of Finance. I'm an ex-Minister of Finance. I know that the Ministry of Finance is always acting like a brake in a car, something that really hinders all the processes. If there is no obstacle today, it may emerge tomorrow. It's a complex time we live on in now. We have complex relations with Europe, with the United States, but I think this solution, this new law on investment support, is the right way to go, and we fully support it. Thank you. Thank you. Today we spoke about process automation. EY, our company, made a study on finance technology services and how they cover our population, and we see that actually we are not that much behind India and China. Sberbank is one of our leaders. Sberbank is the leader among the companies suggesting and using advanced technologies, but of course Sberbank is a big bank, that's why more conservative, but we want more efficiency, higher transparency. It's not always easy to achieve it in no time, but I'm asking the chairman of the board of Sberbank, tell me, can automation of processes can create new instruments to enhance trust between the state and the business? Alexander, thank you for your question. Digitalization, I guess, is the foundation to build trust, because this is the main way to create transparency of all the key players in the process. When it's all transparent, you don't waste time, there is no corruption, there is no empty talk, you just go forward. I can give you lots of examples about it, and they are about the new agreement on protection of capital investment, because banks are among the key players in creating the mechanism of trust, because the investor brings 30%, for instance, of their funds, the bank adds 70%, and we do a project together. And very few projects are implemented without any bank participation, and especially over the past few years, we see how it happens in our bank, in the majority of our banks. The more and more decisions are based on various electronic data and based on electronic technologies. You can get an approval in 3 minutes to get a loan of up to 10 million rubles. It takes you just 3 clicks to answer 3 questions, for instance. And by tradition, we are giving more loans than everyone else. And talking about big business, if you want a loan up to 1 billion rubles, for instance, or more, you just have to click in 5 windows. You have to answer 5 questions, and you can have a loan. And that's important, that the lack of digitalization would not be a mechanism that hinders further business development. We want more automation, more digitalization. And let's imagine this new law is adopted, and 6 months later the investor comes. How about investment agreement? If there is no agreement, there is no project, there is no support. That's why we are very happy that we collaborate very fruitfully and constructively with the Ministry of Finance. We see each other every week, actually, in order to create this investment mechanism, this automation level we need. And today, being the deputy chairman, I'm assigning different inquiries on different subsidies. I'm sending them to different authorities, asking them for certain compensations based on the support mechanisms that have been approved. Of course, they are different, like Ministry of Agriculture. They have one mechanism. They are very much digitalized. The others are not that much, maybe, but we want all these mechanisms of investment support. They should be unified, they should be automated and digitalized. I just turned 45 and I had to reissue my citizen passport, and I was surprised to have a passport reissued. I had to give information about my children, about this and that. We don't want our investors putting their 30% share on the table. We don't want them to have the hassle of filling form after form, producing papers after papers. We want to digitalize this. We want to automate this to speed up the process of taking a decision on granting a certain amount of funds for the project. Thank you. Now, I have another question, a question to entrepreneurs. Viktor Semyonov, founder and chairman of the supervisory board of Belaya Dacha group of companies. 40 years ago, you came to that place named the Belaya Dacha. Around it, you created a very successful company in our market. You involved your children into business. You have a very good management. I know you participated in the contest called the Entrepreneur of the Year. And you know, I was very pleasantly surprised by the level of trust and the way people trust each other working in your team. Tell me, how can you extrapolate this experience of building such high trust between the team members? How can we extrapolate your experience to the whole country to enhance trust between the business people and the authorities? How can the authorities help improve the trust of business in itself as well? Thank you. You are right to say that it's 40 years already, right? There is a young man saying he just turned 45 and I'm 40 years in this business only. But that's true.
многое мы взяли из
You know,
Советского
we
Союза.
took a lot
Знаете,
from
вот,
what
мало
there
кто знает,
was
что
left of
во
the
многие
Soviet
советские
times.
предприятия по духу
Not
своему
all of
строились
you know, but
по
many
лекалам, так же, как и
Soviet
японские предприятия до сих пор
industries
строятся.
were built
Вот,
on
потому
the
что
same
что это
mentality
означает?
like the Japanese
Стремление к тому,
ones
чтобы
are
создавать
still built.
атмосферу, что вот коллектив — это одна семья.
The team is
Конечно, это
like a
нереально, чтобы реально
family,
были семейные
which
отношения.
is not
Тем более, когда
realistic to
в
have it
коллективе
really
более
like in a family,
3000
especially if
работников.
it's 3,000
Это,
employees
стремиться к
in a
этому
company,
и
but trying
и
to
сделать
feel
это как
this
идеал,
is your
и поднимать
family
чувство значимости
and that
людей.
you
Я вам
are
одну
a
вещь скажу
single
из
team,
своего тоже
that's
такого опыта в
important
90-е
because
годы,
people feel
когда было модно все эти
what they
службы
do more
безопасности,
important
такие все
and
это,
fruitful
все
when they
у нас
feel being a
многие
part of a big
компании имели
family.
такие службы
And
безопасности, что
I
вполне
remember
государственные
years
отдыхали. Да?
ago,
Ну и я так тоже
businesses
говорю,
like
слушай, ну и
ours,
нам
we
нам
had a
надо пора
very,
уже
very
модно.
numerous
Вот.
security
И тоже купили всякие эти
department.
игрушки.
We
Вот,
wanted maximum
взяли человека, который этим
security
стал
for
заниматься.
everything
Ну
everywhere.
вот,
We hired
знаете,
a
прошло
guy, we bought
буквально
all this
месяц, даже
equipment.
меньше.
You know,
Я
a
захожу
month
в
later,
офис,
even less, I
и, вы
came
знаете,
to the
другая
office
атмосфера.
and
Казалось бы, ничего не сделали особенного.
it's like
Совершенно другая атмосфера. Все
night and
смотрят,
day, nothing
все куда-то
changed.
так вот, значит,
Everyone
все
was
вот
just looking,
заглядывают, шушукаются
shooting
сразу.
eyes up
Все,
and
и мы с
right and
партнером
left,
вошли в
whispering
кабинет
to
ко
each
мне.
other,
Говорю, слушай,
looking around who's
пригласили
listening or
этого
watching
начальника
them.
службы,
Then
сказали,
we
вот тебе
invited
выходное
our
пособие, забирай все
security
свои игрушки тебе в подарок.
director. We
И
gave
потому
him
что разрушили сразу все
a
доверие.
couple of salaries
Вот
and
эта
said goodbye
атмосфера,
to
да,
him because
нас сразу
this
моментально все
completely
разрушили. И мы
undermined
посчитали,
this
что просто у
family
нас меньше
spirit we
украдут,
had.
чем мы
And you know,
потратимся вот на
we
это. А самое
calculated and
главное,
we understood
нарушим
that
вот
these
это
people, they will
дорогое
steal
доверие.
less
Вот,
if we
оно на
control
самом
them
деле
less,
очень дорогого
because
стоит.
what matters
Что бы я
more
еще
and
хотел
what
сказать
is
из
more
конкретики?
valuable, it's the trust.
Вы
If you
затронули
feel
власть.
you are
Вы абсолютно
trusted,
правильно говорите, что
you
бизнес
work
он не может быть.
differently. And
Вот
you are
Игорь
right
Иванович
to
ушел, да,
say
но
that,
он
well,
хорошую вещь сказал,
unfortunately, Igor
что
Shuvalov left, but he
многие
said one
бизнесы
very
себя
right
ощущают,
thing. Many
как, что мы
businesses,
служим обществу.
they
Реально.
really
А тем
feel
более,
that they
представьте
are
себе, что
public
когда-то я там
servants
директором совхоза был,
serving this
у меня вообще
society,
больше
not just doing
50% времени
business, making
уходило
money.
на детские
I
садики, на
remember
школы, на все.
when we
Я реально
started,
был как
30% of our time,
предприниматель вроде бы, да? Тогда все равно рынок
even though
какой-то
I
был.
was
Да?
an
И в то же
entrepreneur,
время я
even
больше
the
уже себя
market was
ощущал даже
different, I
каким-то
still
главой
felt being not
части города.
the
Да?
head of a
Ну вот.
company, but
И сейчас мы это
being the
тоже,
head of some
это чувство
municipality
осталось.
or the
Мы
city.
понимаем, что
Because
если мы не
30%
будем
of
за
my
своим
time was
забором,
dedicated to
за
solving
проходной заниматься
problems of
территорией,
creating
эти
kindergartens for
проблемы
the
с
children
улицы
of
к
our
нам придут,
employees and other things.
к нам на предприятие. Поэтому мы хотим
People
этим заниматься.
who will
Ну что
want
сейчас
to
мы,
come
например,
to
чувствуем?
work with us. We really
Я,
need to
например,
think about them
мы
as
тоже
well.
в 7 регионах сейчас работаем.
We work
Это
in
благодаря
7
вот этим
Russian
программам
regions, and thanks
импортозамещения.
to
Мы
these
почувствовали, например,
import
на уровне особенно губернаторов
displacement
огромная поддержка
programs.
нашим проектам,
The governors now
особенно
support
агропродовольственным. Да.
much more
Последние
our
3-4 года
agricultural
вот 3 региона
and
только
food
благодаря вот этой
industry
программе. И огромная
projects.
поддержка. Но
3 to
как
4
только мы
years
выходим на уровень
we feel
города,
this really
района,
strongly.
они там
When we
какие-то сейчас
approach
остались
the
без руки.
city level or
Многие из них
the
реально хотят
regional
работать.
level,
Но
many
у
of
них
them
не
really want
осталось
to
ничего.
work,
Они за
they are
одними
handless.
мусорными баками только занимаются.
They are
И ищут
now
денежки, чтобы
handling the
крыши где-то
problem
залатать.
of,
А что-либо сделать, они на нас смотрят и говорят,
trash
ребята, ну
separation,
хоть что-нибудь
and they
помогите.
want to
А
do
мы же
something,
тоже не
but
можем
they
все
feel
вытянуть.
really
Поэтому,
helpless.
вот
They're
на мой
asking
взгляд,
us, could
сегодня
you help us with
настали времена,
anything, at
я
least?
сам, когда был
But we
депутатом,
cannot do
я помню,
everything
как 20 лет
everywhere,
назад
right?
мы
I
принимали
remember
очень
20
тяжелые
years
тогда
ago,
для нас решения.
we
Надо
had
было
to make a
сохранять
very
страну.
tough
И
solution. We
все
wanted to
сконцентрировали туда.
preserve this country,
И
the integrity
вожжи,
of the
и,
country.
значит,
That's why we
финансы,
focused
все ушли
all
наверх.
our finance
Сегодня, на мой взгляд,
efforts
настал
to
период,
support the
мы
country.
укрепили государство, оно
Now,
крепко стоит
the
на
time
ногах.
has come
Надо
when the
потихонечку
state
и
feels
финансы,
strong
и часть вожжей
on its 2
отдавать
feet,
опять
and
вниз. И
when
в
we
регионы
have
часть
to
отдать с
delegate
федерального
more and
уровня,
more
и особенно
authority
муниципалитеты.
and
Потому
give
что
more
вот
trust to
если
those
говорим
who
о
are
среде обитания,
down
она
the
делается
chain.
муниципалитетами.
If we're talking
Какой
about the food
губернатор бы не был
processing industry
гениальный,
or
он никогда до
agriculture,
парикмахерской не дойдет. И до
or
прачечной не дойдет, правильно? Это дай бог,
anything
чтобы
like
мэр занимался
barber
предметно.
shop or
Ну и
pharmacy
еще
or
вопросы,
something,
конечно, обратной
the
связи.
governor is not going to handle
Режим
such
обратной
minor
связи,
things.
его
But
надо тоже
someone
опять
has to.
восстанавливать.
Plus,
У нас он был
feedback.
излишний, такой
We had
ну,
a too strong
коммерциализированный
and commercialized
и
feedback
изуродованный.
mechanism,
А А
which
сейчас
was completely
многие
distorting
чиновники, и не
the
только чиновники,
idea
но и
itself.
бизнесмены,
But now,
чувствуя, что
we
этого
want a
режима
different
обратной
feedback
связи нет,
mechanism, and
что
many
все может
public
втихаря что-то
servants
делать
really
на этом
say
рынке.
that there
Значит,
is no
они
feedback.
человек слабый.
And
Поэтому
since you
режим
have
этот
no
надо вновь
feedback,
тоже
it means
восстанавливать. Я
that you
думаю,
can
то сегодня
do
обращение,
more bad
которое мы
things and
слышали,
no one will
я
say
где-то
a
тоже
word
краем
about
уха там
it. You
что-то
know,
читал
it's
и в этом
toxic.
направлении, и надеюсь, что что-то будет происходить.
So I
Спасибо.
very much hope
Спасибо
that the
большое.
new laws
Скажите,
will
камеры
really
сейчас
change
убрали
it.
или стоят камеры у вас?
So
Нет,
do you have
есть
still
камеры только чисто
CCTV
такие, ну как
system,
вот
cameras watching your employees?
ну, на складе там есть, не, ну
Well, we
при
do have
входах там,
cameras
ну
like at
понятно,
the
чисто,
warehouse
но
or at the
вы же
entrance to
понимаете,
the
там другие
building.
уже
Yes,
появились
but that's
камеры,
different.
когда
And these are
и
different
жучки,
cameras.
паучки там всякие, да, ну куда денешься, а без этого же
Of course, well, you cannot
служба, она
do
же
completely
моментально, она
without
говорит,
it.
вот это надо, это надо. Я, правда,
Because
потом
if
за
you
голову
ask the
схватился,
guys from
думаю,
the security
ну,
department, they
да,
are
и такой
giving you a
момент.
whole list of
Начали
what they
службу
want.
5 человек
Oh,
с
for
начальником.
instance,
Через
when
месяц
we
это уже было
opened the
35
security
человек.
department, there were only
Понимаете?
5 guys,
Ну,
including
самое страшное
the
даже не
director.
деньги. Хотя там все
A month
ребята
later, it was
не
35
дешевые.
guys
Да?
already,
И
and these
аппаратура не
guys, they
дешевая.
cost a
Вот.
fortune,
А
you
самое
know, and the
главное, вот эта
equipment as
атмосфера
well.
недоверия.
So this
Гнетущего, я бы сказал, даже
atmosphere
недоверия.
of lack
Казалось
of
бы,
trust, it was
компании
such
нашей
a
100 лет в прошлом году
heavy
было, да?
atmosphere,
Позапрошлом,
heavy
первый.
environment
Так
where
вот, за
people
один
really
месяц
choked.
все, что
They
накопили,
couldn't breathe
вот,
without
доброе,
being
хорошее,
watched or
практически
feeling,
чуть-чуть,
without feeling
еще
that they
немножко
were
коровьим
watched.
языком слезали.
And if we hadn't stopped this
Да.
practice at
Спасибо большое
once,
за
we would
выступление.
have lost this family of people we created. Thank you.
Александр Пироженко.
I have a question to Alexander Pirozhenko from Agency of Strategic Initiatives, which jointly with the investment community is now making a rating on the business environment, and which is important now for investors to assess the business climate. I also participated in launching these ratings. It was in 2014. Now all 85 Russian regions participate in this rating. There are 34 indicators for assessment. Alexander, my question is, what's the contribution of this rating, the role of this rating to improve the investment attractiveness of Russian regions? And are you planning to change it somehow, this rating? Do you think now there is a need to change maybe the methodology of making this rating? And last question, do the regional authorities trust this rating? Thank you for the question. You are right. We have been making this rating, calculating it, assessing it for 7 years already. The methodology has always been the same. We are very conservative about possible change of methodology because we want consistent results. And we are trying again to think about the new inquiries, new suggestions on how to change the methodology. We do revise the methodology if it does not cancel sustainability of the data, and if the data will be consistent, then we can make certain changes. For instance, we are going to poll separately the big businesses, asking them exactly the same questions we are asking everyone, but we will ask them these questions in a bit different way, which will help us to hear the voice of the big business separately, because now when you poll SMEs, big businesses, you have to see what answers come from SMEs and what answers are given by the big businesses, because it's for 7 years that we've been collecting these data. Now we want to be more precise, and we are assessing. We are going to assess the attitude of clients of investment attraction agencies on how they are satisfied and how they collaborate with these agencies and how efficient is what these agencies do. Talking about the trust, we think the trust to our ratings is high, and every year the trust in our ratings is confirmed by the full house at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, right? This is the forum where we report on every year's ratings, and we also expect new contributions into our rating. If we take the three main and most dynamic indicators, it's like construction, for instance. So we already forgot, but in 2014 we had to spent 541 days. I mean, a construction company had to spend 541 days to get a construction permit, and it could last even up to 3,000. Now, the longest period you have to wait for the construction permit is 131 days, or 42 days is the quickest decision time. It's Tatarstan. So in 6 years, we have a really good progress. Connection to networks. 316 days in Moscow was the worst. In the worst case, now it's 30-something days in Moscow. And all this means that if you spend less time to get a permit or approval to do something, you can start quicker, you can do things easier. And that's why we really hope that we'll be able to digitalize this as a unified service jointly offered with the Russian government, so that everything can be found in one place, everything unified, digitalized in single format. I think this is quite realistic. Thank you. Thank you. And now I would like to change the format of our discussion. Russian regions can become the new points of power or points of economic development of Russia. So I would like to ask the governors of Russian regions to say at least a couple of words of what's currently going on in Russian regions and what is being done to enhance people's trust in regional authorities, and how can you improve the trust further to benefit the development of the region? How can we create better environment for the people to enjoy living in these regions? How can you create more jobs for the population? So now, governors, please raise a hand, pick up a microphone, and your comments, please, guys. No, we are not going to shoot if you don't. Yes, yes, sure, please. Pick up a microphone. Thank you. Thank you, Alexander. Alexander Osipov, Забайкальский край. You know, when Alexander started our event, he said that our discussion is the first discussion after the resignation of the Russian government. And by the way, Mr. Putin is one of the authors and the main author of our Far East economic miracle, as we call it. Since over the past few years, we have a dynamic growth in all respects of our economy. That's why I'm very glad and grateful for you to invite me here today and give me the floor. Talking about trust, okay, let me give you one example based on Zabaikalye. Over the past 8 years, annually, the annual regional product, the gross regional product was declining by 1 year. So over the 8 years, 8% decline in gross regional products, and the reduction of actual income was 11%. While now we have a new plan of social development, we have a new plan to be soon approved for accelerated economic development. We started building new investment projects like hospitals, schools, and so on. And the situation changed. This year, there was a 5% growth in the production, 2.5% increase in real income of the population. It is the proof of trust which we improved. We have not yet completed any of the projects we have started, but people saw that we are doing something for them. And we see economic activity in the region increasing. income increasing, trust increasing. That's why I would like to support Andrei Ivanov. I criticize the Ministry of Finance from time to time, sorry guys, but criticize saying you should speed up, guys, speed up a little bit more. We want the plans to be even more ambitious, because he too is a player in this economic miracle. We also supported the project of Freeport of Vladivostok, where we have lots of investments coming, and others. Now, without such a collaboration, without trust, it's very hard to invest anywhere. And currently, the businesses should 100% be sure, should be dead sure that no matter what internal challenges or problems happen, there should be an adequate support from the government, and then the business will trust us and will go forward. Another example. We had Christmas service in the church. I was going to the church, and I was looking for a pickup in the street. It was cold. Oh, there was a Lexus coming by, and they gave me a lift. They said, "Oh, Governor, oh, yes." And the guy started telling me that he supplied a bulldozer, and the counterparty did not pay for it. We agreed on 80,000 rubles, and he gave me the money. I gave the money to my wife in the evening for something. It was 80,000. The ladies like counting money. She came in, she said, "It's not 80, it's 60,000. I said, "How come?" She said, "You know the guy?" "Yes, I know." "How could it have happened?" He said, "Okay, now for 2 months at least he's going to enjoy the fact that he swindled me for these 20,000 rubles." And that's how it is. Before our special presidential envoy for entrepreneurs' rights protection was put into his place, there was a forum on business community values. If we can't work with each other without getting 10 signatures, collaterals and whatever, with guarantees of this and that, which is not used elsewhere, you pick up a phone and you conclude a deal. But while in our country it is so, when there is no trust, there are so many obstacles, we'll have no good business development. That's why trust is very important. Thank you. I wouldn't completely agree. Still, we need agreements. Lawyers also want their money. They want a job, right? No, I mean it, yes, but only in a consultant company, yes, but not lawyers every few yards. Okay. I see. We also have some regional representatives, yeah? First of all, my true respect to the Ministry of Finance and to Andrei Ivanov for putting pressure to promote this new law. We had such high hopes for it. We very much are looking forward to this concession and this investment support. You already got it going, but the main threat for all of us is that the new law would not kill and nullify all the previous privileges and other things we could offer investors. That's what we want from the new law. But we very well understand that if all of us underwrite under this new mechanism, all of us would benefit. And, you know, it is a prerequisite, but not the only condition we need. Because, you know, people like looking for one single law or mechanism or whatever that you just push the button or adopt a law and everything will be just fine tomorrow. No, of course not. If we want some additional projects to come, we need to solve like always, a lot of administrative challenges. Like if you want money to come to the agricultural industry to develop agriculture, you need to change the law on allocating lands for agriculture and whatever, same for construction and many other things, or like in mining industry. There are lots of alluvial gold places, alluvial gold deposits, but there are a lot of territories where we cannot go with any industry. So we need to rethink this, because we are planning to transform the business climate, but we have had plans in the past as well, but plans are plans. We want solutions, we want decisions. And it's not just the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Economy that should do the job for everyone. All the ministries should be involved. And I'm very glad that now at the governmental level, you have these new goals on improving the investment climate and investment situation in our country. And since you got this going, you just have to accelerate the process. And one more thing I wanted to mention, I think we have a lot of obstacles on the way to governmental investments, because we understand, right, that one of sources of further growth will be investment coming from the government, from the state, where we want it. For instance, construction. Now we have a very good law, 44, amended, a good way forward. Let's revise our land code, land redemption, buyout, and so on, because we want to transform our cities. We want redevelopment projects, which would be both beneficial for the private business and for the population. We need to accelerate these processes. We need to revise other laws. There is no one key that can open all the locks. There is no one solution, but we need to work, and then we'll have it. Thank you.
Наталья Владимировна,
Natalia,
прокомментируйте, пожалуйста. Спасибо.
please comment.
Наталья Владимировна Комарова, губернатор.
Natalia Komarova, governor of Khanty-Mansi Autonomous Okrug. Alexander, thank you very much. And we have already heard very interesting comments about our main topic. And I'd like to say that trust is a dual purpose thing. It has an emotional part and a political and economic part in this notion, because we see there are projects, macroeconomic and whatever, but well, you know, yes, I am a governor, but when we measure the trust of our population, we see that they don't trust us. They don't like something about this. That's why the solutions the Russian president suggested would help us to create this emotional trust, which is very important for the other part of trust. Because, for instance, if there is a team consisting of women, and the head of the department is a man, for instance, so when anyone comes in, these are women coming into the room, he's used to stand up. And people were surprised, but you know, the women working in that place, they really appreciated that. So talking about economic, political trust, enhancing mechanisms, you know, the PPP institutes, concession agreements, all these mechanisms are very important, and this new law should be adopted, even though if we do not completely agree with 100% of its provisions. But in any case, if we live with the old law, it will never become better, no matter how long we work with it. That's why you have to adopt the law, and then we go forward. We have very boldly been using and continue using the public-private partnership mechanisms even before. the federal law on PPP was enacted. We had our regional law on public-private partnership, and we have several investment agreements based on this PPP law. We have concession agreements. We have 31 in our region. We started with very few of them. It was real difficult to had this started. The banks know how hard it is. With concession agreements, we had to take care of each investor. If it was about construction of a kindergarten, a school, or something, we favored their relations, creating trust between investors and the developers to help them trust and start doing something. And for 5 past years, we built 125 kindergartens. And you know how we did it? Only because 30% of them were built not just due to municipal capital investment, but based on public-private partnership. For instance, the developers designed, made a project, we bought it from them. We included the cost of money the developers used for the project, but objectively, this is what helped us build the necessary amount of kindergartens and schools in the deadlines that were given to us. And you know what I wanted to say? One more thing. We're talking about public-private partnership, about concession agreements, but we have anti-monopoly law, antitrust law, and regulation. And they are right to say, the regulators are right to say that all these beautiful, attractive mechanisms favoring investments, they are not that crystal clear and transparent as the antitrust law would like them to be. And that's why they say that using these the use of these mechanisms is not granting the necessary level of transparency for granting more governmental or municipal money for projects, because such choice of partners is not sufficiently transparent as it should be under Law 44, for instance, and there is a conflict. And I would like to ask the legislators, the authors of this new law, to think about this, to remember about this, because there may be a hidden bomb in the new law, because there is something growing deep inside, and we will really need to remember about this, because this objectively exists. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it is as it currently is, and we can't forget about this. We launched this mechanism of public-private partnership, but we have in this respect a conflict with the antitrust authorities, which are regulating these relationships between the state and the businesses. This is what I wanted to add. And of course, trust is exactly what we need. It's the right thing we need. Thank you.
Прошу вас, кто еще хочет прокомментировать?
Anyone else has a comment? Not necessarily from regional authorities, maybe representatives of business community have a word to say.
Тогда я думаю, мы можем заканчивать наш ужин.
Well, if there is no one else to say a word, I think we can close our business dinner. First of all, I would like to thank RANEPA for organizing this forum, uniting and getting together from all around the world the elite of business and authorities. And you know, the level of trust after such forums really grows. So I suggest continuing your agenda in the framework of our forum. I would like to thank everyone for this interesting discussion, and I'm very grateful to everyone for this unique opportunity to talk to each other. Thank you.